Guys, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another video tutorial from the Apex Predator Billiards Club. My name is Apex Elneo, and in today's video we're going to be looking at a 8-ball scenario in which the cue ball is on the wrong side of the object ball and the objective ball, which in this case is the 8 ball, is on the other half of the table. In order for us to get position onto the 8 ball, we're going to need to travel a couple of rails. In this case, 1 rails, 2 rails, 3 rails, 4 rails, and land for a decent shot on the 8. Now, ideally, if it is that you want to fall really nicely onto the 8, we ideally would like to come into this second diamond here and enter into the zone. A perfect shot would have been entering into the zone and landing in between the 8 and the 9 for a fairly and easy shot on the 8. In this scenario, I happen to discover 4 offensive options in which you can consider depending on if the situation is not as it is. I will discuss these variances with you. I will show you different scenarios in which you may not be able to travel option 1 or per se use option 1, where you would have to think about using option 2, and I'll also show you an extreme situation in which you may have to play a bank in order to get position. Alright? Now, in a recent video that I posted known as the 3-rail positional reference point shot, this also calls to mind in which you can consider using this very simple system to actually predict the cue ball's path exactly to land onto the 8. Now that system is of course used for absolute precision, and if you can utilize this system in any of your matches, practice games, or whatever the case may be, you will at least improve your level of precision. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video and add some more power to our game. Now, before we go into the video, I would love for you to go ahead and smash that subscribe button, turn on your post notification bell, consider dropping a like and sharing this video to your pool communities. Let's get into the lesson. Alright guys, so we're going to take a look at option number 1. And option number 1 is obviously an offensive option, and this is instinctively what a pool player, no matter the level, would think they would have to do. Separate and aside from an amateur, as long as you're above the amateur level, instinctively you may think that you need to pocket the 7 and go 1 rail, 2 rails, 3 rails, 4 rails, and just perhaps land on the 8. There's a couple of things that you're going to need to think about in practice when you're playing this shot, so as you can know how to adjust depending on the situation that may be presented on the table at that moment. Now, I'm going to be using my 3-rail reference point positional shot system here to actually calculate where on the 3rd rail my cue ball, pardon me, will be coming off here, so I can know exactly what where the cue ball will land. Now, as I mentioned before, ideally would like to touch the 2nd diamond here and enter into the zone with a nice speed. Now, in my last video, we talked about if it is that the object ball is lying on this center line here that is running from the 2nd diamond on the short rail, as long as the object ball is lying somewhere near to that line, either in front or behind, and if the cue ball and object ball is within this zone, the zone which I'm referring to is halfway between the side pocket and the 1st diamond, and halfway between the 1st diamond and the 2nd diamond here, as long as the object ball and the cue ball is within that zone, then my reference point system works like magic. Here is how we do it. We know where we need to end our exit point on the final rail. We just need to be careful of where on this rail we are going to land. Obviously, we don't need that much precision for this shot because we have a lot of room that the cue ball can travel. But if we want to add a level of precision to our game, we just need to add a touch of just be a little bit careful when we are playing position. So here's what we're going to do. The The natural positional route for the cue ball and the reference point is on the second diamond if the object ball is lying on the center line here, running from the second diamond on the short rail. Now my object ball is a diamond, or let's say 3/4 diamonds ahead. So that means that my reference point is going to shift almost by 3/4 of a diamond. So I know that by playing this shot here, I should be coming off the first rail, second rail here, third rail about here, and entering about this zone here for a relative easy shot on the 8. So I'm not going to be using any spin in this variation. I'm just going to be using the natural angle provided to me by the object ball and the cue ball to travel the cue ball around the table. Let's get into the shot. So I'm just going to be using a nice speed here. Follow the cue ball with natural tops and avoid the 10 ball. So I know where I'm going to end. I just need nice speed here. Let's reset, go through our entire shot routine. Okay, we have it. I'm just overcutting the 7 slightly to give the cue ball a bit more room to catch the rail early. You can see it catches here and it enters a bit short here. Now, we have a shot on the 8, very tough, but ideally would like to land a little bit nicer onto the 8. Let's see if we can play that shot some more, a little better. The cue ball might have hopped and I might have used a bit too much force in executing that shot. Let us see if we can get a bit more precise on the 8. Just overcutting slightly, as I said, and using a nice smooth stroke with relative speed. Catching it. It down here, entering into the second diamond and entering into the zone for a fairly good shot on the 8. When you take this route, you're avoiding a lot of risk, such as scratching or getting too deep and landing behind the 9, or just catching the rail and just joining up too much close to the 8. So you want to avoid all problems where possible. All right, so that brings us to the end of option number 1. Let's look at option number 1, variance number 2. All right, guys, so option number 1, variance number 2 is where we're going to be adding a little bit of spin. And so it's important to understand that if an object ball already has an angle to enter into the pocket, using too much spin is going to generate more angle than what you actually need. So what's going to happen if it is that you apply too much spin here is that once the cue ball catches this point here, adding too much spin, in this case left hand spin, or you may hit the cue ball off center too much, it might catch the 10 and destroy your positional route. So I recommend that if you're going to be using spin, do not use more than a 1/4 tip of spin to go around the rails. Now, you've got to try to overcut the 7, as I said, a little bit to the right of the pocket, so as to give the cue ball time that when it opens its angle off the first rail, it will then accelerate around the table, and catching the third rail, the angle will be open a bit more, heading a bit deeper. Not catching the second diamond here, but maybe about here to about the first diamond. Now, speed control is essential in this shot if you're using spin. Because, as I mentioned before, you might catch too deep, land behind the 9, catch too deep, land on top of the 9, and you might even scratch. So you've just got to be careful that you do not let your instinctive approach let loose and let you play a missed position on the 8. Let's get into the shot. So I'm overcutting the 7 slightly, just as before, and I'm just using a 1/4 tip of spin. Just a quarter tip of left spin here. And just allow the spin to do the work. No hard speed. So here we are, and that's one thing that I spoke about. Obviously that was not my intention, to leave myself snookered behind the 9, but that is what can happen if it is that you use too much spin, or you use too much spin with too much speed. So fortunately I was able to point out an example where, as easy as the position may be, you can snooker yourself on the 9. So you just have to be a tad careful when it comes to executing the shot. Let's see if we can tone down on the spin just a little bit, maybe not a quarter, but 1/8 of spin, and try to land a little bit nicer on the 8. Overcutting slightly, just a 1/8 of spin, barely shifting the Q-tip to the left. Just got to be careful, watch the speed. You see, we are entering into the zone, but we will not have a position on the 8 until the end of the cue ball, which is why option number 1, variance number 1, is a lot easier, because once you catch this rail here, coming off this rail, you're going to be entering into the zone for the 8. So we got a fairly good shot on that 8, still makeable, but I think that we can get a little bit more precise on the 8. So let's make an attempt one last time. So a quarter tip of spin here, overcutting slightly, just barely. Here we go, hold on, and we are on the 8 to execute this win. So in our final attempt, we were able to get precise position on the 8 to execute the out. And there we go, guys. So sometimes you may have a positional shot that you have to play, and if you're not careful, you may not necessarily take note of certain things that can happen. So I hope you were able to see a few things that may go wrong and what you need to do to avoid them. Let's look at option number 2. Alright guys, so we are looking at option number 2, and we are looking at trying to get position on the 8. But in this case now, I'm adding a bit of twist to the scenario. Let's place an object ball here. Let's say it's another stripe. Let's not use a solid, obviously. It's a game of 8 ball. So let us say that our opponent has a ball here. And so if our opponent has a ball here, obviously we won't be able to catch that first rail anymore. So the 3 rail option is out. What other options are there that we could get simply on the 8 for a relatively easy shot? A shot that is makeable. My other creative shot here is to pocket the 7 here and draw the cue ball here using a bit of left spin, low left spin, about 7 o'clock, coming into this rail about here, going down here, at least touching this rail, entering into the zone, or just entering into this triangular zone right here. If we can land anywhere in this area here, we should have a fairly nice shot on the 8. Now this shot requires a special type of stroke. It's not that fast, jerky stroke. It has to be very smooth. You have to allow the spin to do the work. You have to be on a relatively fast table. My table has an older cloth, so I'm gonna have to put a lot more effort into the shot. But if I was on a faster table, I would perhaps get easier position on the 8. Let's see if we can at least come close to getting on the 8. But what's most important here is the route that I'm teaching you that you have to travel. I may not be able to get on the 8 because my table is a bit slow, but I want you to have an understanding of the route that we're talking about. Now, in order for you to execute the shot, and you have to be careful, one thing you need to be careful about is pocketing the 7 too much to the right or even in the center, because you might draw into the 10 or you might draw into the pocket. So you have to give the cue ball time to stay on the tangent line by playing the 7 ball a bit thick, that is to the left side of the center of the pocket. Once it is that you can do that, then you should be able, with the right stroke and the right amount of spin, you should be able to get that cue ball going and dancing around the table for a position on the 8. Let's see if we can execute this shot. Go to your entire shot routine. Remember, you're adjusting where you're aiming the 7. You're not going in the center of the pocket anymore. You're going to the left side of the pocket. Remember that you're playing with left spin, so you're automatically going to be throwing the 7 ball into the right side of the pocket. So you can afford to play the 7 ball a bit thick. That was probably one of my better attempts, even though I am not on the 8. As mentioned before, the cloth is a bit old, so it's lacking in speed, and I cannot overstroke the ball because I may miss the shot or I may just end up in an awkward area. So this is just one of my better shots. Hope you see the route and you see what the cue ball did as it contacted the 7. It swerved a little bit. So let's try to at least get a bit closer to the 8. It's a tough shot and it requires an absolute precise stroke to get that cue ball dancing 3 rails around the table. Let us try to get it in again. We've got to let the spin do the work and try to stroke this as clean as possible. Guys, so that was my best attempt at trying to get on the 8. Obviously, you can see the path that the cue ball is taking. You can see how the cue ball swerves off the 7 to create that draw angle to come around. And as mentioned before, if my table was a bit faster, I would have landed nicely on the 8 for the out. Here are some other attempts that I made whilst I was trying to do the shot. Let's get right into the next option. Alright guys, so my third offensive option is obviously one where I'm not able to touch the first rail, I'm not able to touch the second rail, so my three rail option or my 3-rail route is out. I have a 12 ball here, or my opponent has a 12 ball here that is blocking the draw angle for me to get out here and land on the 8. So what do I do in this situation then? An option here is to actually play the 7 into the side, use center ball, draw into here and allow the speed of the shot to take the cue ball down into a straight line onto the 8. It's a tough shot, it requires an absolutely precise hit on the cue ball. Let us see how close we can get in executing this shot. So you have to play with center ball and you have to play with a steady stroke. This is an advanced route, so let's look at it. So again, because of my table condition, guys, I'm not able to land precisely in the areas that I'm showing you here. I'm obviously showing you that these paths are available to landing on the 8. Now that shot is absolutely tough, requires a precise hit on the cue ball, but you can see that the cue ball took the tangent line, and because of no spin, it just head right back into the line of the tangent, maybe landing on the 8. Let us see if we can get a bit closer on that shot. So it's a tough shot, guys. Requires a very precise hit. But just give it some time on the table, experiment and see what you're comfortable with. Because there's going to be different scenarios in which you may have to choose different routes. That was a little bit close for comfort. I barely escaped the 14 and the 10, and I also barely escaped the 14 and the 10 coming off the first rail. But as you can see, that's a perfect position to land on the 8. Absolutely wonderful. I hope that you were able to see those options and you're able to go on the practice table, get into stroke, execute some of these shots, get a feel of how they are done, and of course, do your best. Now, thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoy my information provided to you about the shot. There are some other options which I'm going to be showing you at the end of this video. You may be able to experiment on them. They're not highly advantageous shots, but they are one that you need to consider. All right? Do take care. Until next time, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time in another tutorial session. Take care.